Welcome back to another ACN mixing tutorial. This is my favorite thing to talk about. Reverb. Why? Because it sounds great. Actually, I love reverb because of what we can make out of it. Remember, when you're using plugins, if you're using outboard gear, don't use it just because it sounds good. Use it for character. Use it for what you get out of it. I understand that's what makes it sound good, but every module, every piece of gear, whether plug-in or outboard gear, console or emulation consoles. This is where we get the sound, and there's a character in each and every one of them. So let's dive straight into this video. Before we do that, like, subscribe, tell a friend, send it to someone. We are talking about how I get the drums to get that sound, and we're gonna show how we mix. I'm going to show you how I mix with my own dep and my own reverb palettes and how we get everything together. So I've seen this done by some of the greatest mixing engineers years ago, watching tutorials, watching them do their own thing, growing up in studios, watching people's reverb palettes and how they build all this together. So if you're looking at the screen, let's take a look at what I'm using, my workflow. And, a lot of people told me if you're going to do this, use plugins that people usually use. Well, I don't use a lot of certain other plugins. This is the plugins that I go for. And I want to show you these plugins that I use because maybe this will inspire you for you to get some of these. So when we look all the way to the left, we have this beautiful gentleman right here. This is the LX480 by Relab Development. And this is their version of the Lexicon 480. This thing came out in the early 80s, mid 80s, one of the first original digital reverbs of that time, one of the greatest sound reverbs. If you heard stuff from the 80s and the 90s with the big snares and the big reverbs, most likely it was the Lexicon 480. They also make a 224. My preference personally is the 480 for its sound. It's unique. It's certain smooth, unique, smooth sound that it has, but yet so open and aggressive, but slight, just petite at the same time, if that makes any sense. It has these small little petite sounds when you listen to it, and the way they just stick out and the way they flow. And if you know how to use this thing, you can make great music. I prefer it. So next to it is its little brother, just recently came out by Relab Development. It's called the Rev 6000. This little guy right here is crazy. You have all types of different selections here. You can do drum space, vocal plates, and shimmer halls, internal halls, and all this other stuff. And this is what right here. Back to the 480. This is my hall. This is my short. This is my short hall. If you look at my reverb palettes, I usually keep them in the aux or bus color, which is that green color, but I highlight them in blue so you can see them properly. So we got this guy over here on hall, we got the Rev 6000 on the short, and then we have on the right side at the top, the last one on the right at the top is something you can find in your Waves plugins. It's my favorite Waves reverb, and this is called TrueVerb, and I'm using this for my hiss reverb. And how I done that is in the frequencies right here. If you look at the frequency response, all I done was cut out some of the rumble and some of the the lows. I kept the mid in there because it just sounded good, and I boosted all this area right here, if you could see that, and that's how I get that hiss. You're probably saying, ACN, what's hiss? Well, you ever heard the reverb that has that simmer? Well, that's my hiss reverb. And then I'm using for plate by Slate Digital. Stephen Slate came out with this beautiful Verb Suite Classics, which has so much emulations. Probably getting stuff out of this guy right here, out of the 480. They put their own stuff, but I'm using this for plate. And there's so much other things you can grab out of here. That this little guy right here can do everything all these other three do. Once again, they have their own characters. And I'm sorry for taking so long. I gotta explain these reverbs and what they're doing and what we're gonna do in the next few moments with them. And this is my plate reverb. Running a very slow decay time. I'm adding some highs in it just to get a small little shine out of it, so it's not that so it's not that dark. And if you pay attention to the mix knobs, they're not that, they usually say you got to blast it. Well, at the end of the day, it's whatever sounds good and whatever you like to do. Look at my mix over here on the Rev 6000. It's in the middle, and pretty much 50%. And over here, this guy is barely touching 70%. That's just the way I set it. Now, I don't make settings. I always said that. I don't make settings for EQs and how I EQ and compress because everything is different. But if you look over here, I have all these. I pretty much can get the hiss out of this one. I got a short. I got a hall 1 and 2 and vocals and a startup that we call. I have all my presets and I've made all these hall 1 and 2, and I can get the same sounds, a hiss, a hall, a plate out of all of them. Look at this guy over here. And then over here, let's see, I have a plate, a snare, a vocal. I can use one reverb 4 times just out of this guy or this guy, but I chose them for different characters. So let's take a look what's going on. I know that took a while, but I want to explain because reverb is a question I get all the time. And like I said, this is dedicated to the people that ask the questions, and I love to answer them. So let's look at our reverb palette. So we got the reverbs right here. We have the 480, the Rev 6000 True Verb, and the Verb Classic Suites up over here. I think I said that backwards. And they're right here. And here I had to open up these knobs over here to make it look like that so we can get to see how we move them back and forth, pretty much like a console. Now, if you're using Logic Pro, which most of you usually do, you can do the same thing in Logic Pro. You open up your auxes or buses, whatever you call them, send them to your mix bus, which is your stereo out in Logic Pro, and then assign them and send them anywhere you want. Now, none of this is reverb at the bottom. These are just my drum boost knobs, pretty much like an SSL console, like, big fader, little fader. So here we go. We have on the toms, we have on the fat snare, which is a sample snare, is a real snare. And right over here, I added all 4 on the room. And let's hear what that sounds like dry in the context of the song. So sounds great without reverb, but it's a little dull. Let's be honest. It's not that interesting. It's not that fun. So that's why we have reverbs. We're not using the reverb to get these big hall effects. We're using them to add character. A lot of times, one of my tricks for the snares is to add reverb to get the fatter sound. It just does something with the EQ, and if you're compressing, it just does it well. It just works fine. So let's start off with the drums. I'm going to solo all the drums here and see what we can do with them and how we blend them in with our reverb palette. Now, people say, hey, I use one reverb. That's fine. Use one reverb. At the end of the day, nobody cares. Nobody cares if you use 10 reverbs. No one, and you know what? You shouldn't care. If you can get the sound you're looking for with one reverb, go right ahead. Have fun. Do it. There's no rules, but I'm showing you my workflow. And sometimes I use 5 reverbs. I use 6 reverbs, but I use 4. 3 is pretty much my average, but 4 just for that extra sound. And now watch this. I have a vocal verb on here too. But let's say you got these palettes right here, right? You can use these 4 to blend in the whole mix. And you don't got to have a vocal verb or a guitar verb or a snare verb. Just use them all and get them setting at a certain way you want, and you can use it on the whole mix. I personally prefer to have a certain dedicated vocal verb. So let's get straight into the drums. Let's hear what's going on here. You hear the toms got verb in them. That ring from the snare is from the real snare, and this is also another real snare. This is my sample from a PDP kit. So let's blend them together. Now, if these weren't dedicated to the whole track, let's say they were just dedicated to the drums, most of the time they are, I would just blend these in, just, move these faders up and down. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that on the small faders, because if I mess with all of these, it's going to affect everything, because you got guitars going through here, even probably the vocal is probably on the plate. even though it has a vocal buzz, but I blend them all in. So let's see how can we blend in, starting with Hall. We'll do one at a time. Make sure they're all down. There you go. Here we go. This is just the fat snare. Hall, 480. Short Hall, Rev 6000. You can see why we call it. You can see why we call it short Hall. There's a difference. Let's hear the hiss. Hear that hiss? I love it. Now let's take a listen to our plate reverb. Here we go. So if you noticed, the plate reverb, let me bring down the rooms real quick. So if you notice, the plate reverb wasn't doing much, but it gave it effect to like more of like a room sound. And that's what I usually do with the reverbs, because if we're recording at home, we're not recording in the world's greatest professional rooms, but you can adjust your room to get that sound. But I'm going to do this regardless. I'm going to get that sound like the vocals in a room or the drums are in a certain room. I could even throw this on the whole drum mix if I wanted to get that room effect. There's so many things you can do. There's so many preferences. So let's blend them together and see what we can do with the snares. Hall. That's the longer reverb. Let's do the short. Throw some of that hiss in there. And throw that plate. You're probably saying, Anthony, what are you doing? You're crazy. Well, if you heard previous mixes I done, this is what I did. This is the sound. This is how I get that sound that you asked me questions about. So you probably say, you're crazy, you're using 4 reverbs just on a snare. Well, at the end of the day, we're not going to keep it like that. We're going to get a better balance in the mix. Let's hear what it sounds like in context with the rest of the song. When you're listening, you're finding out it's not that strong as you thought it was. Here's the thing. No one's going to listen to it in solo. So you're going to hear all these big reverb sounds in solo. That's why I always tell people, mix in context of the song. It's okay to solo. Everybody solos. But don't try to get the world's greatest sound out of soloing your mic or soloing your drum kit, because no one's going to listen to it in solo. So once you start getting the sound you want in solo, you got to make sure the hiss sounds good, the short, the plate, whatever. Now you press play, put the song all on in context, and try to get a better blend, which I think that would be the right thing, to blend it in context of the song, which meaning no solo, no mutes. Keep all the faders up after you've already done your final mix. Reverb should be the last thing you add to your mixes, my opinion, once you balanced everything. And also, let's take a look at this. Right over here, I EQ all my reverbs, and I even do a light compression, so it don't over attack the vocal or the drums. Right here with the VMR, which is by Slate Digital, I'm doing this to the Hall because sometimes there's not a lot of power. If you ever used reverb before, you have to, how do you get more power? Well, you could boost right here on the fader, but that's going to send too much information. So let's take a look at the fader. Let's take a look at the input of the Hall. Now it's barely hitting 1 dB of compression. Now this is why you should use reverb at the end, because if you start bringing up faders of this guy right here, bring up the faders of the snares, you're going to be sending all this information into the compressor and you're going to compress harder. So make sure your drums are where they need to be and keep watching the meters, and also use your ears, which is number one, because the more you raise faders, they're going to go into the compressor and the EQ and get more sound and squash your sound. So you want to hit very lightly with your compression, or don't compress at all. I just hit 1 dB of compression. And over here in the reverbs, and I'll boost up the gain or boost up this main trim over here to get more sound to the reverb if I want it. I'll put that back at 0. So in the hall, the reason why I'm doing that is because sometimes you don't have enough volume of reverb, no matter how much you add. So you need more volume. Now watch this. I'm not boosting a lot of the 8K over here. Usually I would carve maybe, but at the end of the day, if I start boosting high frequencies, that's going to give the hiss sound, and I don't want my hall to have a hiss, so I have a dedicated hiss and a different reverb plugin. So you can do that for all of your reverbs and get the sound you're looking for. Now let's take a listen to the room. This is real room mics. Watch this. Let's bring up all those reverbs, see what we get out of hall. Gives it more of that, you know what? Let's get more sound out of the plate. Gives it more of a grit. Let's try the short. I love it. Blending that hall a little bit. And the hiss. Now, if you pay attention, you're not getting much out of the hiss or the short, because look at the meters. They're very low. But that's okay. It's room mics. Now, you can use this reverb on your rooms and not even mess with any reverb on the dry signals or the close mic signals. That's an old trick. You can do that. Matter of fact, that's something CLA does, Chris Lloyd Algie, once again, the Lord of the Mix. So I'm going to bring that down. Actually, I'll leave up the hall a little bit and some of this plate. So here's the thing: when you're mixing with reverbs, always check your meters and see if you're getting enough reverb. So that way, you might have to boost with a different plugin to get more reverb in the input. So your output is pretty high if it's at 0, but the input is not. So watch your meters, because that could also make you bleed as well, and you don't want to start bleeding and peaking. So, however, you could even put this on your side stick. Let's listen to the side stick when we go to this side over here in this area. No, that's not what I'm looking for. The side stick is right over here. Let's see what happens when we use the side stick. We're going to get there any second now. Yes, sir. Here we go. Let's add on there the his verb. That makes sense. We forgot to turn on the side stick. So what's the point here? Have fun with all these different flavors of reverbs. Make a palette that you like. Use the reverbs that you're familiar with. You could even get these reverbs if you like at Relab Development, Waves, and Slate Digital. Seek it out. If this is something that you need a direction with, hopefully this helped. Like, subscribe, send this to someone that needs help in this direction. And thank you for stopping by. Enjoy, have fun. We appreciate you. Like, subscribe, use are amazing, and I believe that your mixes will be amazing. The more you practice, the more you dive in, the more you start experimenting, the more you start putting your mind to it, you can get there. Don't put in your mind you can't do this. Anybody can do this. If I can do this, so can you. So God bless you. We'll see you next time on another ACN Mix tutorial.